Hello loves, and welcome to my mid-year freakout book tag, which admittedly I wasn't gonna do because I'm late, but I moved, I have my library set up, I have access to my books now, and I said, you know what? Let's just do it for me. So hopefully if you're interested, you'll enjoy this. Otherwise, this is just a little piece of history on the channel for future uses, I guess? Whatever, let's get into it. I have the questions written down, so if I look down, that's why. So, best book that you read so far in 2022. Now, I actually have a couple of options here, and first two options are We All Fall Down by Rose Zabo and This Poison Heart by Kaylin Bayron. Both of these are the first in a series, and it kind of depends on how the series goes, whether or not these can get that position. I loved both of these. I'm excited to continue both of these series, but if I hate how this duology ends, it doesn't get that spot for me. If I'm not into how this series ends, it doesn't get that spot for me. So these are runner-up books in that category. Then we have our more official runner-up, which is No Exit by Taylor Adams. This was a good time. This was gripping, this was engaging, this kept me on my toes. I felt like I was in a suspenseful movie. I was really involved. It was a really good time. Highly friggin' recommend this book, by the way. Like, if you're into suspense and thrillers, we've got a character who is stranded at a rest stop with a bunch of other people, notices that there's a kidnapped kid, and then is trying to deal with that. And there's a lot of action and drama and all kinds of things that's going on in a short amount of time. It's very suspenseful. Good time. But it's not my favorite. My favorite of the year so far is hands down They Never Learn by Lane Fargo. When I was looking through all of the books that I read, I was like, this book is phenomenal. I loved everything about it. It was so engaging. It makes me feel like a terrible person because basically our main protagonist in this book is a murderer. She's a serial killer, but she very specifically targets shitty men who get away with doing terrible things, usually to women. So, vigilante, anybody? I don't know. Morally gray character, but good time, interesting story. You're rooting for her. I was rooting for her. I loved how it went. I loved the ending. I was really into it. I enjoyed this more than I should as somebody who's not a fan of killing. Like, what? I don't condone that. That's awful. No one should ever, but I'm okay. This is my favorite book of the year so far. Next up, we have best sequel read so far, and I have read a couple of sequels here. This was the only one that I'm aware that wasn't the end of a series. It wasn't satisfying because of that. It was good, I enjoyed it, wouldn't count it as the best sequel. As far as I'm aware, all of these were the end of the duologies. I think every single one of these is a duology. A Psalm of Storms and Silence. It was nice. I enjoyed it. Didn't love it, technically. I thought it was really good, had a good time. Not a favorite. The Shadowed Sun in the Dream duology by N.K. Jemisin. I actually loved this a lot more than some other people did. The second one I thought was absolutely great. There's a romance that I was here for. It just felt really different from the first one. So in terms of it being a sequel, that felt a little bit off, even though I enjoyed this more than the first one. The Monarchs. I kind of forgot a lot that happened in the first book, and I kind of forgot a lot that happened here. It's a witchy sorority. I think some things go down, and then there's some things learned, and I really liked it at the end, but I didn't love the entire process. Same with the first story. So this one was a little bit difficult for me. I enjoyed it. I kind of want to read both of them and see how I feel about it after that. With all of those out of the way, my favorite sequel would have to be Deathless Divide in the Dread Nation series. I read both of them back to back, which did help, but I loved both of them. Like, both of the books. I love the first one, I love the second one, I love the world, I love the characters. This is like a historical zombie apocalypse story. Slavery was abolished shortly before the zombie apocalypse, so the freed slaves didn't really get a chance to fully enjoy their freedom before kind of being roped into becoming zombie killers. And we've got a couple of characters who are really good zombie assassins, basically, who end up dealing with some unfortunate things and has to survive the day and deal with some shit. And it's a good time. I enjoyed the characters, absolutely loved it. Would recommend. If you don't like zombies, I imagine you won't like this. If you don't like historical stuff, you probably also wouldn't like it. If you like both of those things, yes. Yes, yes, yes. Oh, and then I mean, it does talk about race and things like that. So it has a lot of powerful messages entwined in this ridiculous and fun zombie crazy experience. New release that you haven't read but want to is actually a spoiler for a book haul that I am gonna do soon in the future, and that is This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron. As you saw, I read the first one, I really enjoyed it. I want to know how the series continues. I don't know if it's a duology or not, but whatever, I want to know. I was really invested. There were some things that I had issues with. There's like a romance that I was like, not my favorite because of specific details, but overall, I'm super excited. Like, I'm so excited to see how the series continues, and I am hoping that very, very soon I will find out. So stay tuned if you want to know my thoughts on this, because we're gonna get to it. We are gonna get to it. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year, which is actually in November, is the sequel to Bloodlike Magic by Leslie Sandbury. So I enjoyed this first book. I really want to continue this series. I'm sad I have to wait until November, but yeah, I imagine we're gonna have a good time. I really want to get around to it. But this first book is about a girl who comes into her magic. In this world, blood is really important to magic, so when young witches get their periods, that tends to be the catalyst to them gaining their magical powers, and then they have to do a sort of some sort of event that will affect what kind of powers they get, which is determined by their ancestors. She unfortunately gets a really, really difficult task with really extreme consequences on what happens if she's not able to succeed. So she has to figure out whether or not she's going to risk her one true love to save her family, or risk her entire family losing all of their magical powers, which in itself has some really significant consequences if that happens. There was a lot going on. It ended in a really interesting way, and I'm really interested in seeing how the next book in this series continues. Next up, we have The Biggest Disappointment. Now, I was originally going to say Ninth House because it's got a dark academia, gothic horror, spooky vibe with a character who is roped into attending this prestigious school so that she can keep an eye on these like cult type groups or whatever, and she sees ghosts and there's all these things, but I ended up not enjoying it so much that I DNF'd it. Now, I do want to give this a second chance, and because of that reason, because it's possible that I just wasn't in the mood at the time, I'm not going to give this the biggest disappointment. Instead, I'm going to give Rosewater the biggest disappointment of this year, because I have no intention of giving this a second chance or continuing with the series. This is a sci-fi by Tade Thompson, who ended up writing The Murders of Molly Southbourne, which I absolutely adored. I loved this so much. So when I ended up hearing about his full-length trilogy, I was all like, okay, we gotta check this out. This is gonna be great. It's gonna be a good time. I loved his other sci-fi writing. Hopefully this will be great. I was so bored. I was so bored, and I got really, really far into this book. I got like 80% or something before I was like, you know what? I hate this. Like, I hate this. I'm not gonna push through it. And then I gave up because I just wasn't enjoying, I wasn't interested. It was just so boring to me. It wasn't for me. Now, obviously, this is probably other people's cup of tea. It just wasn't mine. It just wasn't. I'm sorry. I feel so bad, but I was so upset because I really wanted to enjoy this. And then next up, we have Biggest Surprise. And I actually have two books that are kind of on the same level. So that's Light It Up by Kekla Magoon and Slay by Brittany Morris. Both of these books I've had for a while, and for one reason or another, probably because I knew they were both YA, I stopped having interest in them and was kind of all like, I don't think I'm gonna like them, and kind of just put them on the back burner, not thinking I would enjoy them. But in both instances, I picked these up and ended up really, really loving them. I think both of these are 5 stars for me. They were really emotional. They had powerful messages. I was really involved and engaged in both of the stories, and they had a kind of similar effect on me. So I can't really pick one over the other. They did a similar thing, but in very different ways. So in this one, we have a character who is a game developer who developed multiplayer online game for Black people, basically, because she was sick of feeling left out anytime she would play things like World of Warcraft, and everybody was being racist assholes and not inclusive of her as a character, as a person playing the game. So she created her own world, but she's been keeping it on the hush hush, and after somebody ends up dying in the name of the game, a spotlight gets put on her game and the creator that is unknown, and she has to kind of deal with the legalities of having a exclusive place for people of color to exist. And there's a lot of drama that happens and a lot of things going on as she's trying to figure out how to navigate these waters and who to tell this stuff about, and coming to terms with herself. And it was really powerful and really cute, and I really enjoyed it, just like way more than I thought I would. Light It Up is actually a sequel to How It Went Down. How It Went Down is basically a story about a young Black boy being shot by a white man, and the different perspectives on the event. The people who saw it firsthand, the people who heard about it secondhand, the people that were involved, the people that weren't involved. You hear all of these different voices all on the same event and the aftermath of the same event. And oh my God, was it so powerful and so emotional, and I felt like the characters were so well done. You had all of these different people and these different voices and these different glasses that people were seeing through based off of their own lives and perceptions and experiences, and it was just fascinating and just a beautifully well done story. I highly recommend both of these, specifically How It Went Down, the first in this series. Okay, for newest fictional crush, if I had to pick, it would probably be the guy from The Love Hypothesis. I was actually gonna say no one. I didn't really have anyone that stood out, and I did just read this recently, so that is probably why I feel that way, but I loved him as a character. I really enjoy the broody guys. There were some things that were a little bit annoying about this book in particular, but I liked the characters, I liked the romance, I liked their dynamics. I'm a sucker for that kind of stuff, so it was a fun time, and I would be all for him, I guess. Okay, and then for favorite character, just in general, I think it would be Jane from Dread Nation and Deathless Divide. She is the main character in both of the books, and I just really liked her as a character. I liked her strength, I liked her smarts, I just liked seeing how she went about things and, you know, how she navigated the situation that she was in. And then the second favorite character that I would probably go with would be our main character here in They Never Learned, because she's just a badass. I have problems with her, which is why I think Jane wins, but she's still a badass. It was a good time. Next up, we have Book That Made You Cry, and that would be If You Come Softly by Jacqueline Woodson. This book caught me off guard and had me literally sobbing. Yeah, I wasn't expecting. I was listening to the audiobook. I wasn't paying attention to the length of things. Some stuff caught me off guard, and I was just in tears, like absolutely sobbing. This was a great book. This was very impactful. This really got me specifically. I wasn't expecting it to have the effect it did on me, but it did. And so this is probably the only book I cried like that. Like, it was intense, like friggin' intense. And I cry a lot. Like last year, there were so many books that made me cry. This year, this one, whoo! Book that made you happy, I would say, would be The Dating Plan. I don't remember a lot about this at the moment. I know it was a romance. I know it was fake dating as far as I can remember. I know that there was a really strong and powerful family aspect. I know it was just more enjoyable than I expected to be, and I ended up loving it to the point of me being all like, 5 stars, this is one of my favorites. Now, I can't say that now because I cannot remember most of the book, but it made me so happy. It made me so happy. I enjoyed it so much. I remember the feeling of joy, so I would definitely say The Dating Plan by Sarah Desai. Okay, and then for favorite new author, I didn't read a ton of books by authors that I've read before, except for Rose Zabo. So I read What Big Teeth by Rose Zabo last year, and then this year I read We All Fall Down. This one has a big controversy around it because some people thought that it was racist. There is racism in it, but I don't actually think it qualifies as being racist. I thought it was pretty clear that the characters and the author doesn't condone racism, even though they acknowledge that that is a thing that some Black characters do experience. And since as they were making a commentary on discrimination and being an outcast as a whole, like in general, and so that just happened to be one of the narrative threads that they included. I thought it was really well done. It wasn't the point of the book, so it wasn't upsetting to me having a white author talk about a Black person's struggles, because even though it was commented on and included, it wasn't the point. Like, it wasn't a big part of the book, so it didn't seem disrespectful. And I am really excited to continue with the story. I really hope it doesn't disappoint and change my opinion, but right now I absolutely love their writing. I loved both of these books. This one I kind of hated when I was originally reading it, and then by the end I loved it, and this one I loved the entire way through. So I've read 2 books from them, really excited to read more from them in the future. Another author that I kind of want to say is a favorite new author, but I don't think it's fair since I've only read one thing from them, I believe, would be N.G. Peltier, and that is with Sweet Hands. This was a really cute romance with 2 Black characters, which makes me really happy because a lot of Black romances have a white male character with our, you know, Black or mixed female character. So it's nice having a romance book that features 2 Black characters because it's just not as popular as it should be. And I enjoyed the story, I enjoyed the writing, I enjoyed the characters. It did some things that in general I wouldn't enjoy, but I think it did it in a way that I really liked it. So overall, really enjoyed it, but I don't necessarily feel like it's fair to say that they are a favorite new author since I've only really read this. Maybe one other thing, but I can't actually remember. So they're kind of a runner-up. Okay, and then most beautiful books you've gotten this year, I would say would be Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I'm a big fan actually of this cover, the original non-special edition cover, and then We All Fall Down by Rose Zabo. These are absolutely gorgeous books. I love this particular edition because we have this beautiful sprayed edge design. We have the gold foiling, which I'm not sure if that's included in the original art, and then we have the beautiful original art design as well. This one I think is just gorgeous. It's also a color I absolutely love. For this one, I just generally love the illustration of the houses and this kind of dual house graphic with the font for the title. I just think it's all incorporated really beautifully and really well done with the elements that they decided to include. Absolutely gorgeous books, and books that I absolutely adored, so highly recommend them in terms of the covers and the content. And then for books I need to read by the end of the year, I would say there's a lot. This is just a small handful. Obviously, I want to read This Wicked Fate. I've been wanting to read Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark. It's a novella fantasy horror where the Ku Klux Klan are monsters, and I'm assuming somebody has to hunt down the monsters or whatever. Then we have Cemetery Boys, which is about, I believe, a trans character who wants to be a brujo and is being denied because they're trans, and it's them trying to find themselves and be able to do this journey and things like that. And in the process, they end up getting access or befriending a ghost guy and they have to do some sort of mission together. I could be totally wrong, but I've been wanting to read this for a while, so I'm hoping to get to it soon. Then I also need to read The Death of Vivek Oji, which is supposed to be a contemporary heart-wrenching story about love, loss, and the life of Vivek Oji, who died too young and had a lot of struggles that they had to go through, and it's how they affected the people in their life. And then Middle Game, which is about two magical twins who have a connection, and they're kind of, I think they're being watched by some sort of scientist, and they're supposed to be separated, but somehow they are able to connect with one another even though they're in completely different places. I think they break free and meet up or something and have some sort of adventure, or maybe it's them trying to free each other and get to each other. I don't know. I have no clue, but I know it's like Kayla's from Books and Lala's favorite book, so I really want to check it out and see if I like it myself. And then Horrid by Katrina Leno. I know absolutely nothing about this. It's a cover read for me, and I really want to read it. Okay, and then favorite book community member. There are so many, like too many to name. So here are a couple of my favorites that I'll have on the screen. I feel like the booktube community is really special, and I really want to see it grow. So please do show some of these wonderful booktubers some love. And I will, of course, have them linked down below so that you can check them out. And that's pretty much it for the mid-year book freakout tag. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to thumbs up. Let me know in the comment section down below. Include this emoji, and I will catch you in the next one. Until then, bye. My battery's about to die. I made it. I made it. I made it. I didn't think I was going to do this because, like, dang, it's late. We late, hunty.